I'm really focusing all on my time on helping early stage founders, typically at the pre-seed level, find their way through the insane process of creating a new business.
Form Your Own Pack podcast. My guest today is Lance Cottrell, and Lance is from Feel the Boot, as well as a few other things. Lance, thanks for joining me.
It's my pleasure. Great to meet you.
All right, for people that don't know, who is Lance?
So I'm an entrepreneur, angel investor, and startup advisor. These days, I'm really focusing all on my time on helping early stage founders, typically at the pre-seed level, find their way through the insane process of creating a new business.
So what was kind of the reason and the motivation you had to become an advisor or an investor?
It really came out of my own experiences as a founder. So I created a company called Anonymizer back in 1995. It was the world's first internet privacy company. And there was no support infrastructure. Before I founded the company, I was an astrophysicist. So I was hugely unprepared for what I was going into. We were able to take it to a very successful exit. And at this point, I discovered I really enjoyed the startup process, but didn't really enjoy the existential dread and 100-hour work weeks. So I love working with the founders, and I learn so much, right? That continuous innovation with the people creating the next generation of technologies and solutions, all these up and comers. It's fascinating, it's exciting, it's energizing. And I do it all for equity, because of course, one thing that early stage companies don't have is money. But it's a lot of fun to be able to get in on the ground floor a little bit and help them get funding, nail down their strategy, work out what their product market fit is, define customers, all of that stuff. Because of course, as an early stage founder, you wear every hat. And so everyone's got weaknesses, and I love coming in and helping people kind of fill out their experience as they're building the company.
So what sort of founders or what sort of companies are you excited by, and who are you working with these days?
So one of the fun things that is happening now is the variety of companies I'm working with is gigantic. So I created my own platform called Feel the Boot for startup advice, largely because through the Angelin group that I'm working with, which is the North Bay Angels, I was doing some mentoring and I realized I was giving the same advice over and over. And so I created a platform where, sort of the third or fourth time I gave the same piece of advice, I'd create a YouTube episode and an article on that advice. So now I can say, go read that and let's talk about questions that are unique to your business. And then shortly after the plague started, I reached out to the Founder Institute and said, I'm really interested in getting involved with you guys. And they asked me to become a global entrepreneur in residence. And they've got hundreds of accelerator programs all over the world. And so my role is to effectively be mentor to anyone, anywhere. So when I hold office hours for startups, I literally have no idea where people are going to come in from. In fact, I've just recently started getting actively involved in mentoring companies from the Tunisian branch. And so fascinating, because some of the issues that come up, like in the Middle East, North Africa area, are so fundamentally different than the kinds of things you get in America. I remember through the London cohort, I ended up advising a company that was doing a fintech startup in West Africa, in Togo. And again, the sorts of problems they're addressing there are just so fundamentally different than what I would expect to be talking to people about if they were doing, a classic Silicon Valley startup. And I talked to lots of those as well. But that's some of the fun, is all of these different experiences and spaces and getting more of that global perspective. I have no focus in terms of industry or sector or anything other than stage. I really like to work in that idea through, say, a round kind of phase, as people are really getting all the gears to mesh and working out exactly what they're trying to do.
So if you could give founders one piece of advice, you mentioned the word product market fit first off. What does that actually mean? Because I think there is a little different. What to you, what does it mean?
Yeah, to me, what it means is that you've reached this point where you are creating something that your customers really want. The phrase I tend to use is you've gone from, hey, you should buy my product, to shut up and take my money. That's product market fit. When you explain what you're doing, it goes from being a push to a pull. The customers are like, yes, I have been dying for someone to bring me this thing that does the thing you're doing. And that's when you know you've got it, is the whole tenor of those conversations starts to shift. And really, it's all about validation, right? People come in creating a company saying, I want to do X. I want to create this solution. I think there's this problem. And the problem is that word, I think there's this problem. I think people want X, Y, and Z. The next step is always prove it, validate it, do the surveys, interview customers, do test marketing campaigns, right? It doesn't cost a lot, but do the groundwork to make sure you know that you're building the right thing. Ideally before you build it, right? That's one of the problems I see most often is, especially for technical founders, their instinct is build first, try later. And I'm like, but you're going to be putting 10,000 hours into this thing. Like, don't really focus on understanding whether you're building the right thing first, then go build the thing, right? After you've tested with wireframe mockups or whatever. I'm a huge believer in bubblegum and baling wire, right? Anything you can do to sort of learn, because the less you've built, the less resistance there is to throwing out the thing you've built. And that's what's key, is you want to have very loose attachment to your beliefs so you can change your mind quickly and get to that product market fit.
I love it. And that's consistent with what we talk about, which is rapidly prototype and talk to lots of customers.
Exactly.
And then
right.
You can figure out if you got a business or build it.
It's not rocket surgery, right? But it is hard when you're on the inside. When you're in the business, it's so easy to get tunnel vision on what you're doing. And that's, I think, why advisors and having, say, a community, building a group of other founders around you who can give you that real world feedback and that outside perspective, so that you're not always in the weeds kind of world. And the reality check you need to look up and say, oh yeah, no, I'm making all kinds of assumptions, or I'm talking way too technically, or whatever it is, and making sure that you're really getting to the root of what you're trying to achieve.
I love it. And that's consistent with the entire theme of Form Your Own Pack. So I appreciate you hitting on that.
I mean, networking is so important. I talk about it all the time, especially to technical founders. And frankly, I feel this deeply myself. I come from a science background, a technical background. And so reaching out and doing that networking, going to meetups, engaging with other people, it isn't my comfort zone. And so I tend to avoid it. And I have felt the pain of doing so. So I'm constantly proselytizing for this, building communities and engaging and connecting with other people, because it is such a powerful thing.
I love it. That's fantastic. All right. If you could offer only one piece of advice to founders, what would it be?
I think it really comes back to that validation. Make sure that you actually understand your customer. Talk to them endlessly. In particular, understand why they won't buy from you. I think that's probably the thing people miss the most, is they'll ask, would you like this? Would you like to buy this? Is this something you'd be interested in? But they don't ask, what would be a barrier to buying this product, right? What's getting in the way? What other priorities are going to interfere? What internal issues in terms of your purchasing process would get in the way? I think people don't spend enough time because they're sort of, I guess, afraid to hear the answers, but dig hard for those negatives, because that allows you to build your product and your pitch in a way to circumvent them before they come up.
I love it. That's amazing. Thank you for that. I want to acknowledge you for joining me today and for the work that you're doing with founders. We'd love to see people helping founders grow scalable ventures. So thank you so much for that, Lance. I also want to.
Thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
Of course. Sorry, cut you off. And I want to invite you. We do winner takes all pitch events where founders are asked to stake $100 on their pitch, and the winner is between 5 startups with 3 to 4 judges, and the winner takes the pot. So it's kind of like they're playing poker on their pitch. So I'd like to invite you to a future event. We'll figure out a time when you could be a judge if you're interested in that.
Sure, that sounds like fun.
That's the idea. We'd like to say that if you can't bet $100 on yourself, how someone can bet $1 million on you?
That's right. You should be the most passionate person in the room.
Exactly. All right. So the final thing is, how do people get in touch with you?
The easiest way to find me is at feeltheboot.com. Also Feel the Boot on YouTube, and of course, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, right? All the socials.
Amazing. All right. So the final thing, the really final thing is when we have interesting people on the podcast, we like you to nominate other interesting people. We talked to both founders and investors in scalable startups. So who would you, Lance, like to see as a future guest of the Form Your Own Pack podcast?
You know, I think you should probably talk to Jennifer Kubrados, who's the CEO of Blossom. She's a Toronto startup working on a platform for health and well-being, and she's doing some really interesting things.
As a reformed Canadian, I will accept that. Jennifer, you've been nominated as a future guest of the Form Your Own Pack podcast. Lance, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thanks. It's been my pleasure. It's fun.